Hi everyone. So we are going to begin your first lecture on memory techniques and mnemonics. Okay, so I'm just going to share the screen. Okay, so I hope this is visible. Memory techniques, visualization, and mnemonics. Okay, so just going to done. Okay. All right. So yeah, memory techniques and visualization. Memory is one of the most fundamental human cognitive capacities because it allows individuals to retain, organize, retrieve, and use information across time. Learning, reasoning, language, and decision making all depend upon memory. Yet, human memory is not simply a passive storage system, it is an active and highly structured cognitive process shaped by attention, association, meaning, emotion, and imagery. Because natural memory often struggles with arbitrary information such as numbers, lists, dates, formulas, or names, human societies across history have developed artificial memory systems, commonly called mnemonics, to improve recall. Among the most powerful of these systems are visualization techniques, where abstract information is transformed into vivid mental images, and mnemonic devices, where information is encoded through associations, patterns, symbols, stories, or spatial structures. Modern cognitive psychology confirms that such methods work because the brain remembers meaningful and unusual images better than isolated facts. Competitive memory athletes, language learners, medical students, public speakers, and scholars all use such systems successfully. Okay, so the discussion today will explain the principles behind memory techniques, explore major forms of visualization and mnemonics, and examine how four influential books present these methods. So, on the first hand, you have Moonwalking with Einstein. Okay, the next book that we will discuss is the Memory Book. The other one will be Unlimited Memory, and the final one will be The Art of Memory. Okay, so all of these books we will go through and see how they represent scientific, practical, historical, and applied perspectives on memory. Okay, so let us begin our first discussion with memory techniques. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat it: Moonwalking with Einstein, Memory Book, Unlimited Memory, and Art of Memory. Okay, so understanding memory as a cognitive process. Before discussing techniques, it is necessary to understand what memory involves. Cognitive psychology usually divides memory into three stages: encoding, which involves transforming information into mental form; storage, which involves retaining information over time; and retrieval, which involves recovering stored information when needed. A major reason people forget information is weak encoding. Facts learned without attention, emotional engagement, or structure are difficult to retrieve later. Visualization and mnemonics improve memory because they strengthen encoding. Modern research shows that the human brain remembers images better than words, unusual events better than ordinary events, stories better than isolated details, spatial arrangements better than abstract lists. All of these things explain why mnemonic methods often depend on exaggeration, absurdity, movement, color, and location. So you have Joshua Foyer's Moonwalking with Einstein becoming a good example, where it emphasizes that memory champions do not possess extraordinary brains. Rather, they use deliberate encoding strategies that exploit natural cognitive strengths. Foyer's work popularizes the idea that memory is trainable rather than fixed. So a good example of it would be Goodwill Hunting, okay, where you find mm, it's a Hollywood movie. It actually focuses on how intellectual memory is developed through intensive reading. It was released in 1997 and it was directed by Gus Van Sant. All right. So the film follows Will Hunting, a young man from a working class background in southern Boston. Though he works as a janitor at MIT, Will is secretly a mathematical genius with an extraordinary ability to solve complex problems. So that is already his gift, but he is also, working consciously to expose himself to more and more books, okay, history books, books on economics, and through that he is actually developing his memory even more. Okay, so intensive reading in the movie is shown as something that adds to the memories capacity. Okay, so he's naturally gifted, but he is also someone who is very intent on reading. Okay, and there is a way in which he internally organizes language and is able to rapidly retrieve learned information. So that becomes a good example of how high memory is actually, in some cases, a gift, and also is something that is developed through disciplined intellectual accumulation. Okay, so that is important to highlight. um, So one of the one of the things that you find with Will, with regards to with regards to the movie, just to kind of go back to it, is that there is a certain way in which his memory, okay, the function of his memory actually starts to prevent him from doing normal things in life, okay, like forming relationships, the way in which he is so intensely occupied with his studies and with his problem solving abilities. He's unable to actually give time to his relationships and kind of develop career opportunities and build in intellectual growth, okay, because he is unable to kind of develop that natural gift. Okay, so the movie actually is centered around how he can develop a larger kind of self understanding and emotional healing through therapy, okay, which is provided to him by the character played by Robin Williams. Okay, so that is a very important trajectory as well. Okay, and what the movie highlights is that while memory is in fact a cognitive process, it has to kind of work hand in hand with an emotional quotient as well. Okay, in order to kind of really build a flourishing life. Okay, so that is very significant to highlight. Next, you have Sherlock Holmes as well. Okay, so next we will be going into what is the role of visualization in memory. Okay, and a very good example is provided by the movie Sherlock Holmes, which came out in 2009. Okay, so we will go through that. Specifically, Arthur Conan Doyle, when he created the character Sherlock Holmes, he created the character with certain qualities, and one of them was his extraordinary ability to retain information. And in the movie, that is even extended further by showing the way in which he is able to sensorially map his experiences into places. Okay, so that is also very significant. um so me- so memory is shown to be functioning in an almost unconscious manner in the movie. Okay, so that is important to highlight. So I'm just going to give you a good example of it. um Right. So it is the scene where Sherlock Holmes is taken by carriage while being blindfolded, yet he reconstructs the route entirely through sensory memory, spatial visualization, and inferential association. This scene becomes important because it shows that Holmes does not only rely on eyesight, he uses multiple memory channels at once. Okay. So, uh, on the one hand, you have the blindfolded carriage scene. Okay, how Holmes figures out the route, what Holmes notices while blindfolded. Okay, although he cannot see, Holmes carefully encodes sensory clues. Okay, the number of turns the carriage takes, the discretion changes, okay, slope of the road, wheel vibration, road texture, sounds outside, smell of surroundings, duration of travel. Each clue becomes a memory marker for him. Okay, so that is very significant to highlight. It's an example of spatial visualization. Okay, you close your eyes and then you visualize what has happened. So what has happened in the past in order to recall it. And in the blindfolded carriage scene, the visualization takes place as the events are occurring, okay, simultaneously. So that is also a very significant aspect of visualization as presented in the movie. All right. um okay, so just to kind of give you a bit of a further note. Okay, so Um, visualization plays a crucial role in enhancing memory and learning by engaging the brain more effectively than words alone. It refers to the process of creating mental images to represent information, concepts, or experiences. Such a technique strengthens understanding, improves recall, and makes learning more meaningful. One of the primary reasons visualization is important is that the human brain processes images faster and more efficiently than the text. When learners convert abstract ideas into visual forms such as diagrams, charts, or mental pictures, they activate multiple areas of the brain. Okay, so that is very significant to take into account. Visualization also aids in simplifying complex informations. Okay, subjects such as science, mathematics, and geography often involve abstract or detailed concepts that are difficult to grasp through words alone. By using images, flowcharts, and mind maps, learners can break down complicated ideas into manageable parts. For instance, visualizing the structure of a cell or the steps in a chemical reaction makes it easier to understand relationships and processes. Such a practice not only involves comprehension but also builds confidence in tackling challenging topics. Okay, so very significant to take all of it into account. In conclusion, um, and then two other things to kind of remember. Visualization also supports active learning. Okay, instead of passively reading or listening, learners actively construct mental images, which increases their involvement and concentration. Okay, the process encourages deeper processing of information, leading to better understanding. For example, when students visualize a story while reading, they can better grasp the plot, characters, and themes. Such a practice not only enhances memory but also improves critical thinking and interpretation skills. Furthermore, visualization can boost creativity and problem-solving abilities. By imagining the difficult scenarios, learners can explore multiple solutions to a problem. This is particularly useful in subjects that require analytical thinking. Visual thinking also allows individuals to see patterns, connections, and freedoms. Sorry, visual thinking allows individuals to see patterns, connections, and relationships that may not be immediately obvious through text-based reading. Okay, so that is also important to highlight. Alongside text-based reading, you must also incorporate all the other practices of visualization as I have just mentioned to you. Okay. Now let us look at how it functions in a real life case. Okay, the case of John Nash, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics. Okay. All right. So John Forbes Nash, who lived between 1928 and 2015, was an American mathematician who made groundbreaking contributions to economics, mathematics, and game theory. He's best known for developing the concept of the Nash equilibrium, a fundamental idea in game theory which analyzes strategic interactions when where the state outcome depends on the decisions of multiple individuals. Okay, so that is game theory. I'm just going to repeat that again if you want. The fundamental idea in game theory is that it analyzes strategic interactions where the outcome depends on the decisions of multiple individuals. So that is important to take into account. In 1994, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics, shared with John Harsanyi and Reinhard Selten for his pioneering analysis of equilibria in non-cooperating games. Nash's life story remained widely spread, and public attention was garnered through the film A Beautiful Mind, okay, which portrays both his intellectual achievements and his struggles with mental illness. He continued his work later in life and remained an influential figure in mathematics and economics. John Nash died on May 23rd, 2015, in a car accident in New Jersey. His legacy endures through his actions in and revolutionary ideas, especially the Nash equilibrium, which continues to influence economics, political science, and many other fields. Okay, so just to kind of go over it once more. Visualization converts verbal or abstract information into mental imagery. Since the visual cortex is highly developed, people find it easier to work with them than plain language. All right. For example, apple is easier to remember than justice. Okay, when you're first learning words, apple is easier to learn than justice because you can really recall what apple looks like. Okay, then if you write something along the lines of burning apple, um, is even easier because it looks in, right. A beautiful mind. Let's just look at all of the aspects that Nicole Kidman brings into the movie. Sorry, not Nicole Kidman. Uh, Jennifer Connelly. Okay, so Jennifer Connelly actually um, brings out the human aspect of John Nash. Okay, his human side. All right, because of his, again, like Goodwill in the previous movie, like Will in the previous movie, John Nash too is someone who is locked inside his own mind. Okay, so Jennifer Connelly plays his love interest, and she is able to kind of bring him out of his mind ever so often, but it isn't a guarantee because there are lapses into his delusional dreams. So he has these delusional dreams, and there are these lapses into those dream worlds, even though Jennifer Connelly tries her best to kind of hold him in the present reality. Okay, so I'm just going to read my bit out. Okay, so it says Russell Crowe portrays John Nash memory abilities. His memory abilities are shown through his ability to retain, rapidly symbolically retain information. Sorry, through rapid symbolic retention. Okay, so rapid symbolic retention, I will just give you the definition. So, rapid symbolic retention is a concept of learning and cognitive psychology that refers to the brain's ability to quickly store and recall information presented in symbolic forms, such as words, numbers, signs, diagrams, or images. Okay. So, how does it work? So, the brain hears symbols like a formula, word, or diagram. When it does that, hears or sees, when it does that, it encodes the information, temporarily stores it in memory, and recalls it when it is needed. Okay, so that is how the brain functions. So the memory abilities that are shown of John Nash in the movie includes rapid symbolic retention, pattern recognition, mental abstraction, and complex equation call. Okay, so I'll just give you a discussion on what is pattern recognition in memory studies. So, pattern recognition in memory studies refers to the brain's ability to identify, organize, and interpret information by detecting regularities, similarities, or structures in what we see, hear, or experience. Okay. For example, when we encounter new information, the brain does not treat it as completely new every time. Instead, it compares it with stored memories and looks for familiar patterns. Such a process becomes sorry yes. When we encounter new information, the brain does not treat it as completely new every time. Instead, it compares it with stored memories and looks for familiar patterns. All right. Such a process helps us to quickly understand and respond to situations. All right. So, for example, you're able to recognize faces, that you have seen before. You're able to identify a word while reading new word that you had read earlier, somewhere earlier. You're able to identify it and understand its meaning. You're also able to predict the next step in a sequence of a problem. Okay, so that is important to highlight. The movie, of course, is important because it suggests that extraordinary memory is linked with deep conceptual visualizations. Okay. Um, if you are to connect it to visualization, then you will find that, John Nash mentally sees mathematical relationships rather than merely remembering formulas. All right, so that is an important aspect of his learning and his visualization strategy. All right, so now let us look at the dual coding method. Okay, so and I have one other movie example to give from the dual coding method. Okay, so we will look at the dual coding method. One second. Right. So, the dual coding method is an important concept in memory studies that explains how people learn and remember information more effectively when it is presented in both verbal and visual forms. Okay, the concept of coding. So the theory was proposed by Alan Palvio. Okay, and is known as the dual coding theory. According to such a theory, the human brain processes information through two separate but connected systems. Okay, verbal system which deals with words, language, and text, and visual system which deals with images, diagrams, and mental pieces. When information is encoded in both these systems, it creates two memory traces instead of one, increasing the chances of true recall. Okay. So, how the dual coding method works. So, when you read, we will go into this with example, but particularly if you take a book and then read out the first number that you see, okay, and then you also remember the next first, and then you open it again and you see the first word that it gives you and you remember that particular word. Now you attach the page number of the book that you had just opened with the image of the word that you have seen, and that will actually make it easier to remember the page number. Okay, so that is another example of the dual coding method. Okay, so um, let's study how it is presented in the movie. So, dual coding is actually presented as something which occurs naturally for a savant. Okay, he's naturally gifted, almost he's naturally gifted. The other word for that would be autistic. Okay, but in a manner which actually makes him a higher performer. Okay, a higher um, a higher makes him into a person who is able to retain information more than normal people. Okay, I am unable to recall exactly what syndrome it is, but it is a particular syndrome. Mm, um, so in he it falls within the autistic spectrum disorder with savant abilities, and it is called as the savant syndrome. Okay, it's a rare condition in which a person with developmental disorders, commonly autism, shows exceptional abilities in specific areas such as mathematics, memory, music, art. All right. So in Rain Man, Raymond has an extraordinary memory and incredible calculation skills. Okay, so he's able to remember phone books. He can immediately remember dates and airline statistics and retain exact routines. Um, yeah, so one of the famous scenes in the movie is where Raymond instantly counts scattered toothpicks without counting one by one. Okay. The film represents the Savant syndrome where exceptional memory coexists with developmental differences. Raymond does not use learned mnemonic systems. His recall appears automatic in the movie. That is important to highlight. Okay, now you have mnemonics, artificial systems for memory. Okay, so important to go over it as well. So the word mnemonics comes from mnemosine, okay, the Greek goddess of memory. Mnemonics are artificial devices that organize information into memorable patterns. Major categories include association mnemonics, acronym mnemonics, acrostics, peg systems, number systems, story methods, and spatial methods. Okay, so these are all the um, mnemonics or artificial devices that are used to organize information into memorable patterns. So it is important to take them into account, and we will go over all of them one by one. Okay, so let's look at the first one, which is the association method. Okay, so the simplest mnemonic method is association. Okay, um, the simplest mnemonic method is association. A new item is linked to something already familiar. Okay, so for example, to remember a person named Rose, imagine a rose flower attached to their face. Okay, Harry Lorayne's The Memory Book strongly develops such a principle. The authors argue that memory failure often results from lack of attention rather than inability, and association repairs such a weakness by linking unfamiliar information to known images. Okay, their methods teaches remembering names, faces, speeches, lists, appointments through vivid mental association. Okay, so that is important to highlight. Okay, and like I said, what are the examples of association method given in movies? Okay, so association methods, as I said, John Nash's movie is a wonderful example. Okay, so the Beautiful Mind, which focuses on John Nash. So he forms connections between patterns, numbers, and real world situations. Okay. um and in many ways, obviously, it helps him with his work, but it also kind of becomes delusional at one point. Okay, where he stretches pattern association to such an extent that he starts having hallucinations and is actually unable to distinguish between what is reality and what is not reality. Okay, so that is the the adverse effect of the association method. Okay. um but through it, obviously, what the movie shows is that he's working with logical associations, that is linking facts and clues. But then it goes into an emotional association where he starts linking feelings with memories and images with certain events that had occurred in the past. All right. So that is important. It's important to distinguish between these kinds of associations. They are all part of the method of remembering. You have the logical association, the emotional association, the visual association, images, symbols, objects, pattern association, which recognizes structures and sequences, and repetitive associations, where you have learning through repetition. Okay, but largely, what is important to highlight is that one should be careful to to develop such an association method, because sometimes it becomes so stretched that it becomes difficult to distinguish between reality and what is not reality. Okay, so thank you all so much for listening, and I will continue in the next lecture.